Alright guys, it's actually the next day here. I finally took the carpet out from the inside. I got it up here on top of the roof. This carpet, at least in comparison to the one out of mine, is much thicker. It's definitely more form-fitted than the one I got out of my car. So it's very bulky. It's a little bit heavier, so it was a little bit more difficult to take out as far as like how, I guess how awkward it is to try to do it, at least by yourself. But it is possible to take out. It's a little tricky, especially because so yeah, for the most part the carpet's pretty easy to take out once you have that AC box out. I almost was able to take it out, but the gas pedal was in the way, so I kind of just took the gas pedal off. It's right there on there, and then from there I kind of just rolled it up and then pulled it out. I don't really have too much room, so that's why I just put it on the roof, but that's fine there. So I started pulling all the wirings on the back. It's gotten all the way up here to basically the back seats, and I'm working my way forward. There's a couple cables that still have to unplug. So there's one that goes down, that goes to the, I believe it's just the CO2, not the CO2, the carbon canister that goes down behind the car. There's a cable that goes to that, so I have to disconnect it from the bottom and then feed it up. As well as there's that connector there. I'm actually not sure where that goes to, so I gotta get down there and try to unplug whatever that goes from. Then I can continue working my way up. The really shitty part about this is actually the fact that this trunk all the way up to basically the back seats, almost to the doors, there's dynamite literally everywhere. Which, I mean, I guess it's fine, except for the fact there's a lot of parts where the dynamite was laid over some of the wires. So that one was laid over the wire. Over here is laid over the wire, so that you can kind of see I had to strip away at the dynamiting so I get the wires out. I think I got all of it. At least all of the wires that were covered in dynamiting. So from here, I'm just kind of like working my way back. So yeah, once I disconnect the wires from underneath the car, pull this wiring out, I can pull all of this wiring out. I still got to take that top portion out and unplug those speakers up there. Once I get those out, I can pull the wires out of there, work my way up, unplug the rest of all this wiring, pull it out from the little hole in the firewall, and then all the wires will be out. I'll start mocking up the wires over here. From the looks of it, I think the holes, I don't know if you can really see it, but that hole, the one over there, they're the same size, but the hole for the wire bundle, that little plastic grommet, I think it's much smaller than these. So I'll probably have to take the grommets off these and then try to fit it on there, or maybe try to make the hole smaller. It might be easier actually to just put the grommet on there, but put the wire bundle on the larger grommets, the ones that come in this. So I'll try to see if I can find an extra pair of grommets, so I don't have to basically cut up the other ones. I think actually this one came off of it, maybe. I'll have to look at the wire bundle over there, see if the grommets are still on them. Alright, aside from that, I've been working on getting all the stuff for the doors working. So the regulators, those will have to stay, because the way the door is shaped, those will have to go back in, because the new ones are a different design, so it won't bolt up, at least not with quite a few modifications. All of that's fine. The regulars can stay. The windows are actually the exact same, so I can use either window. And as far as the motor, because I'm using the wiring harness, you can swap out the motor from the newer one and put it on the window regulator from the older style, the first gen S1i7. So that's good. And you just have to make some modifications to the motor. I'll show you guys that here in a bit. But you mount up the motor to the window regulator, you put it back on, And there's a few things you have to do so that way you can clearance it, because of the way the electrical connector goes on it is a little slightly different. So you have to just make a small modification to the way the motor is mounted onto it, so that way you can clearance the connector for the wires. Other than that, everything else pretty much goes on just fine. I still have to make the cut for the door latch. I'll be doing that sometime soon, as soon as I get the latch mocked up, so I can kind of see where I have to cut, so I don't have to cut too much out of it. And yeah, we'll go from there. Over here, actually, I have some of the parts from the donor car. I bought some plastic canisters. I also have some baking soda here. I have a lot of bottles of white vinegar over here. So I'm gonna try to see if I can get some of the rust off all of these parts, so I can transfer them over and use them. Big ones, especially here, the steering knuckle and the wheel hub. The steering knuckle's got a little bit of rust on it, but it's not too bad. The wheel hub has quite a bit of rust on it. I'm gonna try to be able to reuse this, so I'm gonna throw it in basically a huge thing of white vinegar and salt. Leave it overnight, and then hopefully in the morning it's well, nice and clean. So we'll see how that turns out. This one, I got the front brake rotors on it. I try to get as much of it off with brake clean, but it's pretty thick on there. So I'm just gonna try using the vinegar and the salt to see if I can take some of that off. And the same thing over here with the brake calipers. I'm gonna try probably put them in their own little bucket, let them soak overnight, get some of the rust off. Also with the rear ones, I still have to unbolt those so I can get those off, and quite a few of the bolts. So if I want to reuse the bolts off of this car, I'm probably just going to throw them in the vat of the vinegar and salt so I can get the rust off of them, because they're pretty rusty. They're actually a pain in the ass to take off because of how much rust was on them, but that's perfectly fine. I can just throw them in the vat of vinegar and salt, and hopefully throughout the night the salt and vinegar just eats away at the rust, and then hopefully in the morning take them out and scrub them down with some steel wool pads, and then get all the rust muck off of it and see how they turn out. And depending on how much rust has come off, either throw them in for a little bit longer or just clean them off and then coat them with something so that way they don't rust again. I don't know why I left them back here. Can't even reach them. Alright, so the mixture is pretty much for every gallon of this white vinegar, we're gonna mix in about a tablespoon of salt. I forgot to bring a spoon, so I'm just gonna basically just eyeball it. Alright, so I think I'm gonna start with this brake rotor.
Yep. This is like a legend that it works.
Oh, that works.
It's proven to work.
It's proven to work.
I believe it's fucking vinegar.
Oh, that shit's fucking...
Sure, I smell like Tupperware. I guess this rotor just barely fits in here though.
Oh yeah. Oh, come on. It's just...
Oh, either
salt. So, I don't really have a spoon, so I'm just gonna
sprinkle it all in there.
and just eyeball it right there.
That's
about
way more than 2 tablespoons.
That's about 2 tablespoons. All right. I'm gonna use whatever this leftover hose. Mix it. Might have put on there too much salt. Kind of just collect it on top of it. Maybe I should have mixed it before throwing it in here. That's fine. Alright, let those sit overnight. Come back in the morning, see how they come out. Alright, so as far as the motor goes from the window, so I got the motor right here off of the Coyote. So I don't have the other one, but the difference between this one and the older style one is where this connector is. So this connector is here up here, it's right here on the side, and the threads are on this instead of the mounting bracket. So basically, just to make this mount up, you just have to drill out these 3 holes because they're threaded for it to fit. And this is the bolt off of the original window regulator. So you have to basically drill these out enough for this bolt to go through, and once it goes through, you tighten it down to the bracket. I don't have that here with me right now, but I'm gonna still drill out these holes, and then I'll show you guys on the regulator how that's gonna look. Alright, so as far as drill bits, this one right here is a what is this? A 532s. So this goes in really without any resistance, almost. So you kind of like, you feed it in there, turn it by hand. Start trying to make the hole a little bit bigger. So I'm trying to step it up little by little, so that way I don't accidentally break it. I kind of already cracked it right there. I don't know if it's gonna focus, but right there, you can't see right there. I cracked it right there because I was trying to use the screw that comes on it to strip the threads in here. Threads were holding and started to crack this right here. So it cracked maybe about 2/3 of the way through, and then I noticed it, so I stopped that, and now I'm gonna cautiously just drill out the hole with the drill bits. Maybe if I can do it by hand, I might just do a little bit by hand too. I can't go any further with that one. But I want these to be straight as possible. So if I can turn most of it by hand, that'll help a little bit. Also, definitely if you have a one of those little T-handles, probably help a lot too. But I think, yeah, I got this one through. So this one's a 1164. So I'm kind of just stepping it up little by little. That way the hole is as straight as can be. Alright, so that one's good. Give it a few turns. Make sure you get as much of it off. Alright, now this top one, right on through. Give it a few more turns. And just pull it back out. Alright, so that was 1132s. Now we're going to step up to 3/16. So I want this to be as straight as possible. Just like that. I don't know if you guys can see that. And now we're using the, what did I say, 3/16. So just very slowly drill into it until it comes through the other end. So it's through on this side. Alright, now this top one. Alright, next step, 1364. As straight as possible. So 732s next. Back out of it. Get rid of that extra. Alright. There you go. Got that top one. Get rid of all this excess. Alright, now the bottom. Straight as possible. Real slow. 1564. We're gonna go to quarter. There you go. Pull that off. Now the bottom one. Okay. And this top one's last. Oh, got caught in there a little bit. All right. Plastic cover. Now, come on. Ooh, perfect. Each one of them goes in nice and smooth. There we go. That's what we're looking for. All right, so stepping up from a 532, it's gonna go all the way up to a 1/4 inch drill bit. Now you could just go all the way up to the 1/4 inch, but I want to make sure that I drilled it out as closely as possible, so that way all the holes are straight. I don't accidentally cross drill, and I mean, came out fairly well. They look all look pretty much straight. That's pretty good. Alright, now we're gonna mount this up, see how well it looks. Alright, so we're inside. So I got the motor off of, so this window regulator is off the first gen S197, so mine. You can tell because this bolt is on the bottom instead of here on the side. And you can tell the newer ones, they have it right here on the side instead of on the bottom, so that's why it's slightly different, but they're pretty much essentially the same thing, so you can still use this one. The way these motors mount up, they're pretty much very identical. They are almost exactly the same. Maybe there's slight differences between these motors, but the biggest difference is definitely where the connector is. So off of the first gen S197, you have the electrical connector. Just goes straight back that way like that. Whereas in the newer one, oops, just dropped that. These bolts over here. It goes pretty much downward this way. And that's why you kind of have to clearance it, because the connector and the body gets in the way. So what you have to end up also doing is have right here all things set up. And I probably should have just left this off. Actually, I don't remember where I left the original bolt, but these bolts, these ones that are part of the frame, they're kind of just like hit into this little bracket, so they're not bolted down or anything. So to get it out, what I ended up doing is I just took a semi hard surface this socket. So what did I use? I used the 50mm socket. Just laid it on there, and I forgot to grab a hammer, so I just used these clamps, vice grips, and just kind of like smacked it on top. I put the nut on top, so I didn't like mushroom the end of the bolt, and I just smacked it a few times until it basically broke loose. I took that off. Then from there, what you're gonna do is here it is. So I used the M6 by 1, and it's a 30mm long little bolt. You're gonna use this, and you're gonna feed it up here. And I took one of these washers. This is an M8 washer, so it's a little bit wider, so I get a little bit better coverage. And you take this, where is it? I have M6 by 1 nuts. I just put this one facing down, tying it down as such. Make sure it's on straight. And finger tights is good right there. And then take another one of these M8 washers, put the smooth side up, set it down right there, and that's good how it is. I left this with the nut, or I left the nut with the bolt. I think I left that in the truck after I went to go buy one of these to make sure I had one that was the right size. But you have to do this so that way this connector will clear the door frame, the way the door is shaped. So what this does is you're gonna push it out slightly so this connector clears, so you can get the electrical plug on there, and the motor will fit like that. And all of this will still work just fine because the regulator is still gonna fit up the same way. And then this wiring that basically links all of this up will also be fine. It's just mainly so you can bolt up the motor, so the motor moves all of this, but the whole thing will still work fine even if you have this on there to clearance it. So from there, this one had these style bolts on it, and basically you would mount it on there, and then from underneath these would come in and screw down and hold this down. But for these, this didn't have threads on the motor. It just had basically a sleeve that these come down, and it bolts down to the bracket for the motor. So this didn't fit through originally, so you saw I drilled through it, and it ended up being a 1/4" drill bit, so that way it fits right through. So you have threads on the end. So now what we're gonna do is take this motor, just line it up as such, push down on it a little bit. Alright, that should be good. Now we're gonna take one of these bolts, just feed it in there like that. Same with the top. Can't tell if it's threading. And the bottom. Come around a little bit. Make sure this is actually threading. Alright, so the bottom one threaded. And then that one. And as far as these bolts, you're going to use a Torx bit. It is a T30 Torx. I got to tighten these down. Alright, so that one's in. This one is threading, maybe? Yeah. Just tighten down little increments. The motor kind of doesn't really go on a little bit because it's probably cocked a little bit. So when you tighten it down, it's going to seat properly. So you want to make sure this is tightened down all the way. Kind of just light hand tightness on each one of these. Make sure it goes down evenly. Just like that. And it's still going down. So you can see it's still pretty loose because it's still seating. Alright, it's starting to get a little resistance now. So this one feels tight. That one feels tight. This one feels tight. Let's give it one more pass. That one start a little more. So just keep going around. Make sure each one of these is on tight. You don't over tighten it either though. Just make sure they're kind of snug. Alright. And with that, you have mounted the newer, I guess the 2010 to 2014 window motor onto the 05 to 09 window regulator. So now you're gonna take this regulator, you're gonna put it back in to the door with the new motor and this extended bolt. And I'm just gonna take one of these over here. They're the same size, so you can use them. But I didn't want to use one of these. I just went and got a bolt with a nut and washer, so that way I can still put this back on if I want to put it back on the donor. From there, you're pretty much gonna put this all back in, bolt it down. I don't know how well this is gonna clearance. Alright, so yeah, from Instagram we have Mustang Coyote swapped. He's the one that's also been working on doing the Coyote swap on the first gen S197s. He's been doing it for a couple months now, so he's gone through a lot of this stuff already, and I've learned a few things from him of what I need to do to make parts kind of like transfer over onto the first gen, so I can make all of it work. And this is one thing he had to do, is basically have this extended bolt here, so that way you can have this connector to clear, because it's going to sit and this is going to be in the way. So what this is going to do is it pushes this outward a little bit, so the connector will clear the door, so you can plug it in. The motor will look fine, as you can see right there. Let's grab this camera off. Went on there perfectly fine, nicely seated. So motor mounts up perfectly fine to the regulator, so you can use it. Now I'm gonna do the same thing with the other one. I'm not gonna really show you that, but once I get the other one done, throw them back on the doors, and then we'll be able to go there and start throwing the door back together.